Halloween had always been a magical time for me. As a child, I eagerly anticipated the arrival of October, counting down the days until the 31st. Now, as a grown-up, I cherished the opportunity to relive those cherished memories with my own family. Little did I know that this Halloween would forever change the way I viewed the holiday. My husband, Mark, and I had recently moved to a charming small town nestled among the rolling hills of New England. We were drawn to its picturesque streets and the promise of close-knit community life. Our 2 young daughters, Lucy and Mia, were equally excited about our new beginning. As the weeks rolled by and October approached, the town underwent a remarkable transformation. It was as if the entire community came alive with the spirit of Halloween. Decorations adorned every house, pumpkins lined the sidewalks, and eerie soundtracks emanated from hidden speakers. One house, in particular, stood out amidst the festive landscape. The old Victorian mansion at the end of our street. It was the type of house that seemed almost too perfect for a spooky tale, with its towering turrets and wrought iron gates. Despite its grandeur, the mansion had been abandoned for years, and rumors about its haunted past abounded. One crisp evening, Mark and I were sitting in the living room, carving pumpkins with Lucy and Mia, when we overheard our daughters discussing the enigmatic mansion. They had heard stories about a reclusive family that had lived there long ago, tales of eerie lights in the windows at night, and strange noises emanating from within. Intrigued by the local legends and determined to prove that there was nothing to fear, Mark and I hatched a plan to visit the mansion on Halloween night after the kids had gone to bed. Our aim was to unravel the mysteries that shrouded the old house, and in doing so, teach our daughters a valuable lesson about facing their fears. As the moon hung low in the sky on Halloween night, we embarked on our adventure, armed with flashlights and a sense of excitement. The mansion's grandeur was more apparent in the eerie moonlight, and its darkened windows seemed to conceal countless secrets. The front door creaked open with a spine-tingling groan, revealing a dimly lit foyer adorned with cobwebs and dust-covered furniture. It was as if time had stood still within those walls. We ventured deeper into the mansion, room by room, our flashlights cutting through the darkness like beacons. The air grew heavy with a sense of foreboding, and each step echoed with the whispers of bygone conversations. In one room, we stumbled upon an old photograph of a family, a mother, father, and 2 children, smiling as if frozen in time. The children in the photograph bore an uncanny resemblance to our own daughters. As we continued our exploration, we uncovered diaries and letters that chronicled the family's life in the mansion. They had been a happy family, but there were mentions of strange occurrences, unexplained shadows, eerie whispers, and mysterious drafts that chilled the air. Just as we were about to leave, a chilling gust of wind swept through the mansion. We heard faint, distant laughter echoing through the hallways, and the temperature plummeted. Our flashlights flickered, and the room was plunged into darkness. In that moment, the air grew heavy with a sense of malevolence. Something unseen brushed against us, and Mark and I could sense a presence in the room. We reached for our flashlights, but the batteries were dead. With growing panic, we groped through the darkness, trying to find the exit. But it was as if the room had become a labyrinth, with walls that shifted and closed in around us. Whispers filled the air, and the laughter grew louder, closer. Desperation mounting, we clung to each other, searching for any way out. Suddenly, a voice, cold and haunting, spoke in our minds, "Welcome to the family." In that moment, the room seemed to collapse around us, and we were enveloped in an abyss of darkness. The chilling laughter echoed in our ears as we realized that we had become a part of the mansion's haunting legacy, joining the family that had once called it home.
As the autumn leaves began to paint the world in hues of gold and crimson, I felt the pull of nature's embrace. Yearning for solitude and a break from the monotony of city life, I rented a remote cabin nestled deep within the forest. Little did I know that my escape to the wilderness would become a harrowing descent into fear. The cabin in the hollow stood at the heart of a dense forest, surrounded by towering oaks and pines. It was a charming, rustic abode, with a stone fireplace, creaky wooden floors, and a sense of isolation that promised a peaceful retreat. For the first few days, I reveled in the tranquility of my surroundings. I spent my time hiking the winding forest trails, collecting fallen leaves, and writing by the crackling fire. The solitude was a balm to my weary soul, and I welcomed the escape from the chaos of the outside world. However, as the nights grew colder, and the forest seemed to come alive with the symphony of nocturnal creatures, a feeling of unease settled over me. It began with a distant rustling in the underbrush, a sound that echoed in the stillness of the night. On the fourth night of my stay, as I sat by the fire reading, I heard it, a series of hesitant knocks on the cabin door. The sound was faint, almost imperceptible, like the whispers of the leaves outside. I dismissed it as a figment of my imagination, a trick of the wind, but the knocking persisted, growing louder and more urgent with each passing moment. My heart quickened, and I approached the door cautiously. My hand trembled as I reached for the doorknob. When I swung the door open, I was met with darkness, the inky blackness of the forest at night. Moonlight filtered through the trees, casting eerie shadows that danced on the ground. There was no one there, no sign of the source of the knocking. I stepped outside, scanning the forest for any sign of movement. The wind whispered through the trees, but there was no other sound, no trace of the intruder. I convinced myself that it must have been an animal, a raccoon or a squirrel, playing tricks on my imagination. With a sigh of relief, I closed the door and returned to the warmth of the cabin. I told myself that I had been foolish to let my imagination run wild. But as I settled back into my chair, the knocking resumed, louder and more insistent than before. My heart raced as I swung the door open once more, but the result was the same. A vast, empty expanse of moonlit forest. There was no rational explanation for the knocking, and fear began to creep into the edges of my mind. For the next few nights, the knocking became a nightly ritual, a relentless intrusion into the solitude of the cabin. I grew sleep-deprived and paranoid, constantly checking the door and scanning the forest for any sign of the mysterious visitor. On the seventh night, as I sat in the cabin with every light on, the knocking reached a fever pitch. It was no longer a mere tap, but a thunderous, frantic pounding that echoed through the cabin. The walls seemed to shake with each deafening blow. In a fit of terror, I flung the door open, determined to confront whoever or whatever was tormenting me. But as I stepped outside, the knocking ceased abruptly, and I was met with a bone-chilling sight. There on the ground in front of the cabin lay a shallow grave. Moonlight illuminated the freshly turned earth, and I felt a surge of horror and disbelief. I had no recollection of digging such a grave, and there was no body within it. As I stood frozen in terror, a voice whispered from the depths of the forest, a voice that was not my own. It beckoned me, called my name in a haunting, ethereal tone that sent shivers down my spine. Without thinking, I stepped closer to the grave, compelled by an irresistible force. As I peered into the empty darkness, I realized with a sinking dread that I was staring at my own name etched into the cold earth. The forest seemed to close in around me, the trees stretching their gnarled branches towards the cabin. The disembodied voice whispered my name once more, this time with a sense of cruel triumph. In that moment, I understood the horrifying truth. The knocking, the grave, the whispers, they were all part of a malevolent force that had lured me to the cabin in the hollow. I had become ensnared in a nightmare, a descent into madness from which there was no escape.
I remember it vividly, that Halloween night when everything changed. It was a crisp, cool evening, the kind that sends shivers down your spine and paints the world in shades of orange and black. My friends and I were brimming with excitement as we embarked on our annual trick-or-treating adventure. Little did we know that the treats we sought would lead us down a path of horror and despair. I was 13 at the time, and my best friends, Sarah, Jake, and Tim, were with me. Dressed in a motley assortment of costumes, we were an eager and rowdy group of trick-or-treaters, determined to fill our bags with candy and scare ourselves silly along the way. The neighborhood was ablaze with decorations, from eerie tombstones in front yards to skeletons hanging from trees. As darkness descended, the streets transformed into a surreal, magical realm where anything seemed possible. Our first stop was the Forrester House, an imposing old mansion at the edge of the neighborhood. Rumors had swirled for years about the eccentric widow who lived there. Mrs. Forrester was known for her extravagant Halloween displays, and each year she outdid herself. We couldn't resist the temptation to explore her elaborate haunted house. As we approached the creaky gate leading to the Forresters' front porch, the wind howled, sending a shiver down my spine. The house loomed before us, adorned with cobwebs, flickering candles, and eerie, lifelike statues. It was a masterpiece of spookiness, and we couldn't wait to see what horrors awaited inside. With a mixture of excitement and trepidation, we entered the Forresters' haunted abode. Dimly lit corridors led us deeper into the mansion, where cobweb-covered furniture and ghostly apparitions greeted us at every turn. It was a thrill unlike any other, and we relished the feeling of fear coursing through our veins. But as we ventured further into the haunted house, things took a dark turn. The walls seemed to close in around us, and the air grew colder, heavier. The eerie statues that lined the hallways appeared to watch our every move, their eyes gleaming with malevolence. We came to a room bathed in an eerie crimson light, where a lifelike mannequin of Mrs. Forrester herself stood. Her eyes were glassy and lifeless, but her expression held a haunting sadness. It was then that we noticed the room was filled with countless portraits, paintings of children, each bearing a striking resemblance to one of us. Fear gripped our hearts as we realized that the mannequin of Mrs. Forrester was cradling a miniature coffin. Inside, a doll dressed in tattered clothing lay motionless. It was a chilling tableau, and we knew we had to escape the haunted house before it consumed us. We retraced our steps, the eerie surroundings seemingly closing in behind us. The walls pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and the statues whispered haunting lullabies in our ears. Panic set in as we struggled to find the exit, but the mansion had become a labyrinth of darkness. As we reached the front door, we were met with a horrific sight. The mannequin of Mrs. Forrester had moved. It stood before us, blocking our only means of escape. Its glassy eyes bore into our souls, and its lips curled into a twisted smile. With a sudden, unnatural movement, the mannequin lunged at us, its arms outstretched in a ghastly embrace. We screamed in terror as it enveloped us, its cold, lifeless limbs tightening their grip. Darkness closed in around us, and the world faded into an abyss of horror. When I awoke, I found myself in a dimly lit chamber, my friends beside me, all of us bound by ropes. The room was filled with an assortment of eerie artifacts, dolls with vacant eyes, faded photographs, and an old tattered journal. As my eyes scanned the journal's pages, I realized with dread that it belonged to Mrs. Forrester. It chronicled her descent into madness, her obsession with Halloween, and her twisted plan to create the ultimate haunted house, one that would capture the souls of children. With a growing sense of horror, I pieced together the truth. Mrs. Forrester had trapped us within her haunted mansion, seeking to steal our souls to add to her collection. The lifelike dolls, the portraits, the mannequin, it was all part of her sinister scheme. The room grew colder, and a haunting voice echoed in our minds. It was Mrs. Forrester, her spirit trapped within the mannequin, seeking to claim our souls for her macabre collection. In a desperate bid for freedom, we struggled against our bonds, but it was futile. The room seemed to close in around us, the artifacts whispering secrets and malevolent incantations. With each passing moment, our strength waned, and the darkness of the chamber threatened to consume us. But then, as if guided by a miracle, Sarah discovered a hidden latch beneath a dusty old rug. With trembling hands, she managed to free herself, and together, we untied the rest of our friends. The room, sensing our determination to escape, seemed to falter, its grip weakening. We bolted for the exit, the mannequin of Mrs. Forrester lurching after us with unnatural speed. As we burst out of the haunted mansion, we heard a bone-chilling wail behind us, the anguished cry of the vengeful spirit. The mansion itself seemed to shudder as if relieved of its malevolent presence. With our hearts pounding and our bodies trembling, we raced back to the safety of our neighborhood. The horrors we had witnessed in the Forrester house would forever haunt our memories, but we had escaped with our souls intact. We had ventured into the darkness and emerged stronger, forever bound by the horrors we had faced together.